Hello, human beings everywhere. I'm Andrew Fantasia. Welcome to another review marathon. Thank you so much for joining me here. As always, if you enjoy what you see, please feel free to give this video a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. And hey, if you happen to be a fan of fantasy books and adventure books, well, maybe you can help out this handsome fellow by going to Amazon and ordering copies of his brand spanking new self-published fantasy books, We Were Wizards. Let me hold those up a little bit closer for you there. Hey, you can get both of these right now. The purple one is book one. The silver one is the next book in the series, even though it's not book two. Long story. You'll understand when you read them. But you can pick up We Were Wizards right now on Amazon all over the world. These are the hardcovers, but you can get paperbacks and even ebooks if you're into that sort of thing. So check those out right now. And hey, don't forget to leave reviews too, because that always helps me out. If you've joined us for the past 8 review marathons, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us, welcome not back. Welcome first. I don't know if there's a phrase for that. Just welcome in general. Here's how our review marathons work. As a film aficionado, I like to, expose myself to as much film as I possibly can. So what I do is every 3 months, I watch as many movies as I can that I have never seen before. But the rule is they have to be at least a year old. Fresh new movies don't count because, of course, you haven't seen them before. They're new. Very few people have. I have yet to see Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves because it is coming out right now. But that shouldn't really count. So we're just going for older movies. I want to expand my knowledge about the world of cinema in general. So last time I set a big new record. I think I watched 51 movies, which is to date my biggest review marathon, at least my biggest normal one that I have ever done. I mentioned that for this next upcoming one, I was probably not going to hit that big a number, and I didn't. I posited that I would probably be able to see 25 movies, just because the January to March season is kind of busy for me with work, so it would be difficult for me to see a whole lot. So 25 was my estimate. I'm very happy to say I beat that estimate. Because today we are looking at a grand spanking total of 30 new movies between January and March 2023 that I have never seen before that we are going to talk about today. So, buckle in and let's get started, beginning with Addams Family Values. This was my first time seeing this all the way through without commercials, and I'm glad I did. Because as far as I'm concerned, Addams Family Values outpaces the original by a long shot. It's so much funnier, so much darker, and so much more undeniably Addams. If anybody were to ask me, what's the Addams Family, I would just show them this. Plain and simple. Sonnenfeld nailed it here. The Body Snatcher. This 1945 flick based on a Robert Louis Stevenson story is one of the classiest Golden Age horrors I've seen in a long time. Without a single vampire or monster or creature from some kind of lagoon, it manages to weave a really chilling tale, oozing with dark shadows and rotting graves. Boris Karloff is fantastic as usual, and he gets a small, albeit memorable, scene with fellow Universal monster alum Bela Lugosi. I know milk does the body good, but damn, Body Snatcher, how much of it have you been drinking? The Brass Bottle. Tony Randall is an absolute treasure, but even he can't save this comedy from falling flat. I love stories about genies, so you'd think I'd be all over this, but the movie seemed to have a very adamant pro-American bureaucracy stance, which rings a little hollow in this day and age. And even though I can almost always put aside modern viewpoints and just enjoy any piece of art for what it is, this stance just made The Brass Bottle come across as woefully naive. To top it all off, you've got Burl Ives walking around in a turban half the time, so it's not the most sensitive film either. Barbara Eden's here, at least. I met her. She's delightful. Bright Lights, Big City. This bizarre Michael J. Fox picture is about the vapid, soulless nature of New York City's party scene circa the 1980s. That concept raises some interesting eyebrows, and I think Fox gives it the best he can here, but this movie feels all over the place. One scene is a sad, powerful monologue that cuts to a character's core, but it happens within 5 minutes of the same character sneaking an angry ferret into his boss's office, resulting in a drunk old man having a suit of armor fall on top of him. And all the while, they keep making this ham-fisted metaphor about a coma baby, and it's just like, what is happening? I did not love this. Can she bake a cherry pie? Two middle-aged divorcees, one who runs on pure emotion and the other on pure logic, find one another and try to make their quirky romance work. There's a cinema verite feel to the way this is filmed and edited. The filmmaker made no attempt to mute background noise, and I'm pretty sure all the actors are improvising, so watching this makes you feel like a fly on the wall just observing human behavior. It's really neat. And as if the improv feeling wasn't strong enough, who should pop up in a cameo but a young, pre-gray hair Larry David? The only disappointing thing is that there's not a slice of cherry pie to be seen. Darby O'Gill and the Little People. This is one of the most goddamn charming movies I've seen in years. I tuned in based on the sole reason that I knew I was going to get to hear Sean Connery sing, and in the end I was treated to this absolute delight of a fantasy about a poor groundskeeper who catches a leprechaun. It's full of outstanding quotes that you can't do justice unless you say them in a thick Irish brogue. Quotes like, "Sit down and eat your stirabout," and "Hold your wisht, I'll have no more from you," and my personal favourite, "So you've put the come hither on me. That's how you pay me back, you ungrateful little Franey. Your heart's as cold as a wet Christmas." If you put stock in that sort of thing, this actually has a full 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. By the end of the movie, I was literally grinning ear to ear. Go watch this right now. Death Force, aka Vengeance is Mine. I saw the extra-long, uncut version. A soldier is betrayed by his two asshole friends and left for dead. He washes up on a deserted island where two Japanese soldiers have been stranded for 30 years. They nurse him back to health and teach him the art of the samurai. Then he returns to the crime-ridden streets of LA to get his revenge. Part chopsaki, part blaxploitation, and all cheese. If you like your movies to look like they've been competently made, stay away from this one, but the more it went on, the more I liked it. Until that absolutely baffling ending. The 70s were a weird time. Doom. Doom is an early 2000s action sci-fi, so I went into it expecting a bunch of people walking through gloomy hallways trying way too hard to sound badass, accompanied by a soundtrack that just sounds like a Slipknot CD. I was almost right. Instead, Doom turned out to be a bunch of people walking through gloomy hallways trying way too hard to sound badass, accompanied by a soundtrack that just sounds like a diet Slipknot CD. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. Moving on. The Golden Glove. The Golden Glove tells the gruesome story of Fritz Honka. Who was Fritz Honka? Well, take Jack the Ripper and stick him into the seedy streets of Hamburg, Germany in the mid-1970s, and you've got Fritz Honka. The Golden Glove is not X-rated, but it felt like it really ought to be. It's the kind of movie that makes you sick to your stomach and you want to take a long, hot shower the second it's over. It also paints a heartbreaking but realistic portrayal of the lives of homeless people and sex workers. Please take my advice and do not watch this on a full stomach. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? The classic story of a white woman falling in love with a black man in the 1960s. It's exactly what you think it is. Old white folks being shocked and appalled and downright scandalized by the news. But I like that the movie tackles it maturely, or at least maturely for the 1960s at any rate, by having the girl's parents not be staunch racist Republicans, but rather lifelong forward-thinking liberals who still have their beliefs challenged by this new development. It paints an interesting portrait of racial tensions in 1960s America and makes for an invaluable history lesson. The Handmaiden. This Park Chan-wook movie is goddamn magnificent. Be forewarned, it is extremely erotic, so watching it with the wrong person might make for some uncomfortable moments, but don't let that stand in your way. If you like your films laden with intrigue and twists and layers of overlapping plot that unfold before your eyes like a magic trick, then you're going to love every second of The Handmaiden. This might be my favorite period piece and my favorite foreign film of the past decade. Also, we need to give props to whoever came up with this poster design. I don't think I've ever seen a movie poster that so exquisitely summed up its characters and its plot using nothing but the actors' hands. Friggin' brilliant. Hard Boiled. As a director, John Woo has always been about style over substance, and nowhere is that clearer than in Mission Impossible 2. Hard Boiled is slick and stylish too, and it's the kind of movie Constable Butterman from Hot Fuzz would absolutely love, because it's basically Chow Yun-fat and Tony Leung firing two guns whilst jumping through the air for 2 solid hours. But I'm grabbing a seat next to Butterman here because I actually really liked this. It started off feeling kind of like Heat, and then 3/4 of the way through, it turned into a Die Hard movie. It's not going to win any Best Screenplay awards, but Hard Boiled is Hong Kong action cinema at its finest. Hard to Kill. Don't be fooled by the fact that the title is just a slightly less cool way of saying Die Hard. This is by no means an action classic. I mean, it's not bad. It's Seagal doing what Seagal does best, walking around in a ridiculous leather jacket, beating people up and asserting his dominance. It's a revenge story, though, and those are always satisfying. It's one of those yarns where you relish seeing every bad guy get his just desserts. The Incredible Shrinking Man. As far as classic science fiction films go, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This might be one of the best I've ever seen. It doesn't give in to wibbly-wobbly techno-babble, instead opting to focus on the humanity of its protagonist and the horrors he endures, both psychological and otherwise, when he starts shrinking one day and just doesn't stop. The trials he overcomes are terrifying, and his story will tug at every heartstring you've got. The Incredible Shrinking Man is an absolute gem. Kung Fu Hustle. I caught snippets of this back when I worked at a movie theater and thought it looked ridiculous. And it is, and that's part of the charm. The best way I can describe Kung Fu Hustle is like this. Bart Simpson was forbidden from watching the full-length Itchy and Scratchy movie. If he'd seen it, and if it had been filmed in live action, I imagine it would have looked exactly like this. This is a bananas film with excellent cartoonish martial arts and a sweet story buried at its blood-soaked roots. Lady Vengeance. The final installment of Park Chan-wook's Vengeance trilogy, of which I had initially only seen one. It's definitely the saddest and most haunting of the three, and considering how absolutely dark this trilogy is, like we're talking Catacombs of Hell dark, that is saying something. But Lady Vengeance shines because it allows itself to be beautiful in between the dark moments. It's like a Swarovski crystal sculpture that fills you with dread and breaks your heart while you sit admiring it. And I saw the fade to black and white version, in which the film begins in full color and gradually becomes monochrome as it reaches its climax. I am genuinely shocked that Hollywood hasn't cranked out a soulless American remake of this yet. So if any Americans ask, shh, just pretend this film doesn't even exist. Nothing to see here, Americans. Look, I think there's a football game happening behind you. Moving on. Plan 9 from Outer Space. Look, this so-called worst movie ever made is not the worst movie I've ever seen, not by a long shot. It's a totally serviceable, cheesy sci-fi B-movie from the era that saw the fall of the classic Hollywood studio system. Knowing what I know now about Ed Wood, this is a testament to the can-do attitude and perseverance that are paramount when it comes to directing a motion picture. Anyone who wants to try their hand at directing owes it to themselves to watch this. The fact that you can see the seams makes it one of the best free lessons you can get on the subject. Plus, Tor Johnson as a zombie is just awesome. Repo Men. Gritty, not too distant future dystopian sci-fi is always hit or miss with me. Really love stuff like RoboCop and Blade Runner, was lukewarm on stuff like Equilibrium and The Running Man. Repo Men kinda falls in the middle for me. It was decent and the leads were likable and it took a real good advantage of that juicy R rating, but the story and the overall package it was wrapped in just felt a tad lackluster. However, considering the United States still adequately refuses to set any kind of good healthcare in place, this is still going to be relevant for a long time. Rush Hour 1, 2, and 3 finally gave this mega popular trilogy a watch, and I don't think I'm into it. 90% of these films is just obnoxious, unfunny comedy. Almost none of the jokes land and almost all of them have aged poorly. For me, the only reason to watch these is for Jackie Chan. The man moves in a superhuman way and he makes it look easy. On top of that, he's just so charming and likable. These really made me wish I was watching one of his Hong Kong movies instead. The Rush Hour flicks are pretty to look at, they're shot well and they're all nice and colorful, but I've got no interest in ever seeing them again. Shanghai Noon. After dipping into one Jackie Chan franchise where he teams up with an American, I figured I'd try another one. First of all, I had no idea this was going to be a Western. Second of all, the movie had 1 minute left before it ended when I finally realized that the title was a play on High Noon, and I felt so ashamed it took me so long to realize it that if you want to turn the video off right now, I'll totally understand. The plot feels a lot like the plot of the first Rush Hour, with Chan coming to America to try and rescue a kidnapped person. It was fun, but a little juvenile. Shanghai Nights. Even though I'm a big Western fan, I ended up liking this sequel way more than the original, trading in the dusty streets of Carson City for the shiny cobbles of Victorian London. It was a lot of fun, and it fulfilled a mini dream of mine of getting to see Jackie Chan and Donnie Yen fight on screen. Aaron Taylor Johnson does a damn good job in one of his first big roles, Littlefinger plays a slimy villain, and it all culminates in one hell of a good sword fight. I'm into this. It's cheesy, good fun. Song of the South. Yep, my curiosity got the better of me, and I had to see the film that was so racially insensitive that Disney tries to pretend it doesn't exist. And now that I've seen it, yeah, I understand. But I'm going to put something out there, just as a thought. Instead of doing dry, pointless remakes of all of their good movies, I wonder what would happen if Disney got together a pool of talented black actors and black writers to remake this film in a more sensitive, inclusive way. Make Song of the South the way it ought to have been made in the first place, as a black story told by black artists, instead of a black story with white artists pulling all the strings. I don't know. All I know is we can do better. Star-crossed. It always makes me sad when I find out that a movie is in danger of disappearing. Case in point, Star-crossed. A 1985 James Spader joint filmed in downtown Toronto, where Spader meets a lady who happens to be a magic alien and spends the whole movie running around evading evil aliens and FBI agents. It's classic 80s fun. It's also a TV movie, so it's incredibly hard to find. Star-Crossed is not available on home media. It's not streaming anywhere. It doesn't even have a Wikipedia article. I only know about it because a friend recommended it. Thanks, Ben. And thankfully, someone uploaded it to YouTube. The quality was crap, but at least it's watchable. We as a society need to preserve more movies, so spread the word about Star-Crossed, because you know what? It wasn't half bad. Stranger Than Paradise. Legendary director Akira Kurosawa called this little independent flick one of his all-time favorite films. While its humor takes some getting used to, Stranger Than Paradise, which was Jim Jarmusch's first full-length outing, has a lot of heart. If you watch this waiting for something shocking or incredible to happen, you're watching the wrong movie. But if you just go along for the ride, this offbeat road trip picture will put a spell on you, and you'll be charmed before you know it. Street Fighter. James, thank you for getting me this Blu-ray, because Street Fighter was a total delight. Its Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic fits perfectly with the story it tries, more or less, to tell. Every character looks remarkably like their 16-bit counterpart, which is pretty damn impressive considering when this movie was made. It harkens back to a simpler childhood time. It's the kind of movie you would watch after finishing a Little League softball game, and then you'd go home and you'd play with the tie-in Happy Meal toys. Seeing Street Fighter really made me sorry that I missed it as a kid. I would have loved joining in the schoolyard discussions about it. And Raul Julia, God bless him, is an absolute boss. Bring back movies like this, please. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. Rounding out Park Chan-wook's Vengeance trilogy, even though this is the first installment of it, is Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, which is just as shocking and horrific and unflinching as the rest of his oeuvre. I think this might be my least favorite of the trilogy, but really that's only if you put a gun to my head and make me rank them. They're all outstanding pieces of cinema. This one has a mid-runtime shift in focus that just took a bit for my lame brain to get used to, so I was a bit thrown off. Other than that, it delivers on exactly what the title promises. We need to talk about Kevin. Chilling. Absolutely fucking chilling. Let's get the obvious joke out of the way. Yes, Ezra Miller is in fact playing a spooky juvenile psychopath years before they became a spooky grown-ass psychopath. But what's important is how the film masterfully weaves this heartbreaking tapestry through the eyes of Kevin's mother, played by the incomparable Tilda Swinton. This is about as scary as it gets. If any birth control pill companies want some free advertising, just play this movie for people. It will work. Yi Yi. When it comes to Chinese cinema, Yi Yi is held in the same esteem as Titanic or Citizen Kane. In fact, as of the time of this recording, Letterboxd has it ranked as the 17th most beloved film ever made. Yi Yi is about the individual members of a family in Taipei, as each struggle with the questions of life and its purpose and their place within it. Director Edward Yang uses deceptively simple cinematography, so much so that watching it made me want to get better at shot composition. His camera placement makes you feel like a voyeur, like you're intruding on this family's private moments. It's a long movie with a very meandering pace, so it might not be for everybody, but as a pillar of cinema, it's absolutely worth a look. And that makes 30. There we go. We've done it. Review Marathon 9 is in the bag with 30 films. I always notice every time I do one of these that there seems to be just a trend in general that I'm not even fully conscious of while I'm watching the films. You know, in previous years, it has been maybe movies that are set in New York, etc. You know, there's always like a trend that kind of happens, a theme. And this time around, the theme definitely had to do with Asian cinema. Because not only did I see a bunch of Jackie Chan movies that I have never seen before, they were American movies, but then I saw, you know, a John Woo film and then a whole bunch of Korean films that I had never gotten to see. So I'm really happy to expand my repertoire beyond the Western Hemisphere. As any film buff should do, there are great artists making great movies and telling wonderful stories all over the world. So if you're looking for new things to watch and you've, you know, exhausted the Hollywood resume, you know, throw an eye over to Tollywood or Bollywood or whatever the Korean film industry calls itself, because I really don't know if they have a phrase. But check out multicultural films, because you're always going to see some delicious goodies that you never even knew existed. Anyway, that has been Review Marathon 9. I have been Andrew Fantasia. You have been magnificent. I will see you all next time. And until then, adios.